Welcome to my channel. World Scene News. Subscribe to my channel for news updates all around the world. In 2024, the EU took a dramatic stand against what it saw as unfair competition from China, focusing on electric vehicles. The EU launched an investigation, concluding that Chinese EV makers were heavily subsidized, allowing them to undercut European brands. In response, Brussels imposed steep new tariffs, ranging from 17% to over 35%, on top of the existing 10% import duty. The move sent shockwaves through the auto industry, signaling the EU's intent to protect its strategic sectors. The tariffs aim to make Chinese EVs less attractive to European consumers, giving local brands a fighting chance. This wasn't just about economics. Security concerns also loomed, as modern cars collect vast amounts of data. Western governments began to see Chinese EVs as potential tools for surveillance, not just competition. The EU's action followed the US, which had already imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, with Canada soon following. The stakes were high. Europe's car industry employs millions, and the threat from China was both economic and strategic. The tariffs were a defensive measure to safeguard Europe's industrial base and privacy. The message to Beijing was clear. Unfettered access to the European market was over for those playing by different rules, but this bold move risked retaliation from China, a key trading partner for many EU nations. The decision was a gamble, setting the stage for a high-stakes confrontation. The EU's resolve was strengthened by a mix of economic and security fears. The world watched as Brussels drew a line in the sand, ready to test the resilience of both economies. The era of open markets was giving way to a new age of strategic competition. China's response to the EU's tariffs was swift and strategic. Instead of targeting European cars, Beijing hit politically sensitive sectors, agriculture and luxury goods. The first blow punitive duties up to 62% on European pork, threatening a $5 billion export market. Next, China imposed up to 35% tariffs on French brandy, devastating a $1.7 billion industry. French cognac exports to China plummeted even before the tariffs took effect. China widened its net, launching investigations into EU dairy and imposing duties on industrial plastics. By targeting diverse products, China aimed to fracture EU unity and pressure Brussels to back down. The retaliation was carefully calibrated to maximize political pain in key EU member states. The trade dispute quickly expanded beyond cars, threatening a broad array of European industries. China demonstrated its ability to strike at multiple points, escalating the conflict into a full-blown trade war. The numbers behind the trade war reveal its true scale. EU tariffs on Chinese EVs now reach over 45% for some brands, with BYD, Geely and SAIC hit hardest. China's countermeasures are just as severe: pork duties up to 62%, brandy at 35%, and new threats to dairy and plastics. These aren't symbolic moves. They target industries worth billions and with major political influence. The ripple effects extend beyond Europe. Canada and the US face similar retaliation, with China blocking key agricultural imports. Global supply chains are disrupted, and producers from Spain to Canada are feeling the pain. What began as an EV dispute has spiraled into a multi-billion-dollar conflict. The stakes are enormous, with entire sectors and livelihoods on the line. The trade war is reshaping the global economic landscape. The trade war's impact is deeply personal for European workers and businesses. In France, cognac producers, especially small vineyards, face ruin as their biggest export market dries up. Spanish pork farmers, once China's top suppliers, now confront a devastating surplus and plummeting prices. Governments lobby Brussels, highlighting how a move to protect one industry can devastate another. Dairy producers in Ireland, the Netherlands, and Germany fear losing access to China, threatening rural economies. Co-ops and companies scramble to rethink export strategies amid growing uncertainty. Meanwhile, European car makers like BMW and Mercedes suffer as Chinese consumers turn to domestic brands. The trade war, meant to protect European industry, is hurting some of its most iconic companies. Economic retaliation is proving unpredictable, with winners and losers on both sides. The fallout is a stark reminder of how interconnected and vulnerable global industries have become. Despite tariffs, Chinese EV brands doubled their market share in Europe. Their secret, even with added costs, European profits outstrip razor-thin margins at home. Chinese automakers absorbed tariffs, prioritizing market presence and brand recognition. They exploited a loophole, quadrupling exports of plug-in hybrids, which weren't subject to the new duties. This agility allowed them to keep expanding, while European brands struggled to adapt. Chinese companies rolled out new models tailored for European tastes, backed by aggressive marketing. Meanwhile, European car exports to China continued to decline amid rising nationalism and political tensions. The EU's attempt to shield its market ended up weakening its position in China. The automotive trade balance shifted even further in China's favor. The tariff war had unintended consequences, reshaping the industry on both continents. China's retaliation went beyond tariffs, targeting Europe's technological vulnerabilities. Beijing restricted exports of rare earth elements, critical for EVs, wind turbines, and electronics. By adding more minerals to its export control list, China threatened to choke off vital supply chains. European manufacturers faced the nightmare of stalled production without these materials. China also paused new investments in EU countries backing the tariffs, slowing capital flows and testing EU unity. Beijing prepared to require export licenses for advanced automotive tech, flipping the script on years of Western demands for technology transfer. China's growing technological clout became a powerful bargaining chip. The message to Europe's dependence on Chinese resources and innovation is a strategic vulnerability. The trade war was now about more than cars, it was about control over the future of technology. Europe found itself on the defensive, scrambling to secure its supply chains and industrial base. The trade war's effects are hitting ordinary people across Europe and China. European farmers and vineyard workers face job losses as exports collapse. Car factory workers worry about layoffs as sales to China fall and competition intensifies at home. Prices for goods like pork and plastics rise, squeezing family budgets. Chinese workers in EV factories see strong demand, but nationalism shapes consumer choices. European brands lose ground in China as buyers opt for domestic cars out of patriotism. Consumers, on both sides, face fewer choices and higher prices. The era of cheap, abundant imports is ending, replaced by uncertainty and rising costs. The global economy's interconnectedness is unraveling, with real consequences for daily life. The trade war is no longer abstract, it's personal. The EV dispute has pushed EU-China relations to a breaking point. Negotiations have stalled, with both sides entrenched in their positions. The EU considers tougher measures, more tariffs, new investigations, even sanctions. China, reliant on the EU as a key export market, faces a major setback if access is lost. Both sides have strong incentives to compromise, but neither wants to appear weak. The risk of a full-blown trade war looms, threatening industries far beyond autos. Any resolution will require complex compromises, limited tariffs, quotas, and more transparency, but the underlying tensions won't disappear. Europe is wary of China's state-led model while China seeks technological dominance. The EV dispute is just the beginning of a new, more competitive era. The future of global trade and the balance of power hangs in the balance. For car buyers, the trade war means higher prices and tougher choices. Cheap Chinese EVs will be less common but won't disappear. Plug-in hybrids will fill the gap. European brands get breathing room but must innovate to stay competitive. Chinese companies are here for the long haul, investing in local networks and tailored models. The competition will drive faster innovation, better tech, longer ranges, and more affordable EVs. But geopolitics now shapes the showroom. Origin, data, and trade policy matter. Buying a car is no longer just about price or style, it's a reflection of global power struggles. The market is more complex, but ultimately, consumers may benefit from the race to innovate. The car dealership has become a front line in a new era of economic rivalry.